Welcome back, everybody, and welcome back to the continuation of my book reading of The Cell. Here we go. But it turned out I didn't have to run. Anyway, he walked a worry circle a few more times, muttering that crazy talk, and then just walked off. I could hardly believe it. I thought he had to be trying to fake me out. But at the same time, I knew he was too crazy for anything like that. He glanced briefly at Clay, then back down at her hands again. My problem was running into him again. I should have stuck with you guys the first time. I can be pretty stupid sometimes. You were... Clay began, and then the biggest explosion came. From somewhere east of them, a deafening growl. They made them all duck and cover their ears. They heard the window in the lobby shatter. My God, Mr. Riccardi said, his wide eyes underneath that bald head made him look to Clay like little orphan Annie's mentor, Daddy Warbuck. That might have been the new Shell superstation they put in over on Neeland. The one all the taxis and the dock boats use. It was right there. It was the right direction. Clay had no idea if Riccardi was right. He couldn't smell burning gasoline, or at least not yet. With his visually trained mind's eye could see a triangle of city concrete now burning like a propane torch in the leading day. Can a modern city burn? He asked Tom. One made mostly of concrete and metal and glass? Could it burn the way Chicago did after Mrs. O'Leary's cow kicked over the lantern? That lantern kicking business was nothing but an urban legend, Alice said. She was rubbing the back of her neck, and all she were getting a bad headache. Oh wait, let me reread that. She was rubbing the back of her neck as if she were getting a bad headache. Mr. Myers said so in American history. Sure it could, Tom said. Look what happened to the World Trade Center after those airplanes hit it. Airplanes full of jet fuel, Mr. Riccardi said, pointedly, sorry. As if the bald desk clerk had conjured it, the smell of burning gasoline began to come to them. Weaving through the shattering lobby windows, sliding beneath the door to the inner office like bad mojo. I guess you were on the nose about that Shell station, Tom remarked. Mr. Riccardi went to the door between his office and the lobby. He unlocked it and opened it. What Clay could see of the lobby beyond already looked deserted and gloomy, and somehow irrelevant. Mr. Riccardi sniffed audibly, then closed the door and locked it again. Fainter already? He said. Wishful thinking, Clay said. Either that, or your nose is getting used to the aroma. I think he might be right, Tom said. That's a good west wind out there. But the air is moving towards the ocean. And if what we just heard was that new station they put in on the corner of Neeland and Washington by the New England Medical Center. That's the one, all right, Mr. Riccardi said. His face registered glum satisfaction. Oh, the protests. Small money fixed that, believe you. Tom overrode him. Then the hospital will be on fire by now, along with anybody left inside, of course. No, Alice said, then put a hand over her mouth. I think yes. And the Wang Center's next in line. The breeze may drop by full dark, but it doesn't. Everything east of the Mass Pike is up to be so much toasted cheese by then 10 p.m. We're west of there, Mr. Riccardi pointed out. Then we're safe enough, Clay said, at least from that one. He went to Mr. Riccardi's little window, stood on his toes, and peered out to Essex Street. What do you see? Alice asked. You see people? No. Yes, one man. On the other side of the street. Is he one of the crazy ones? She asked. I can't tell, but Clay thought he was. It was the way he ran, and the jerky way he kept looking back over his shoulder. Once, just before he went around the corner and onto Lincoln Street, the guy almost ran into a fruit display in front of a grocery store, and although Clay couldn't hear him, he could see the man's lips moving. Now he's gone. No one else? Tom asked. Not at the moment, but there's smoke. Clay paused. Soot and ash, too. Can't tell how much. The wind's whipping it around. Okay, I'm convinced, Tom said. I've always been a slow learner, but never a no learner. The city's going to burn, and nobody's going to stand pat. But the crazy people. I think that's right, Clay said. And he didn't think this was true of just Boston. But for the time being, Boston was all he could bear to consider. In time he might be able to widen his view, but not until he knew Johnny was safe. Or maybe the big picture was always going to be beyond him. He drew small pictures of the living, after all, but in spite of everything, the selfish fellow who lived like a limpet on the underside of his mind had time to set up a clear thought. It came in colors of blue and dark, sparkling gold. Why did it have to happen today, of all days? Just after I finally made a solid strike. Can I come with you guys if you go? Alice asked. Sure, Clay said. He looked at the desk clerk. You can, too, Mr. Riccardi. I shall stay at my post, Mr. Riccardi said. He spoke loftily. But before they shifted away from his eyes looked sick. I don't think you'll get in touch with the management for locking up and leaving under these circumstances, Tom said. He spoke in a gentle fashion Clay was so much coming to like. I shall stay at my post, he said again. Mr. Donnelly, the day manager, went out to make the afternoon deposit at the bank and left me in charge. If he comes back, perhaps then. Please, Mr. Riccardi, Alice said. Staying here is no good. But Mr. Riccardi, who had once more crossed his arms over his thin chest, also shook his head. They moved one of the Queen Anne chairs aside, and Mr. Riccardi unlocked the front doors for them. Clay looked out. He could see no people moving in either direction, but it was hard to tell for sure because the air was now full of fine dark ash. It danced in the breeze like black snow. Come on, he said. They were only going next door to start with, to the Metropolitan Cafe. I'm going to relock the door and put the chair back in place, Mr. Riccardi said. But I'll be listening. If you run into trouble, if there are more of those people hiding in the Metropolitan, for instance, and you have to retreat, just remember to shout, Mr. Riccardi, we need you. That way, I'll know it's safe to open the door. Is that understood? Yes, Clay said. He squeezed Mr. Riccardi's thin shoulder. The desk clerk flinched, then stood firm, although he showed no particular sign of pleasure at being so saluted. You're all right. I didn't think you were, but I was wrong. I hope I do my best, the bald man said stiffly. Just remember. We'll remember, Tom said. I will be over there maybe 10 minutes. If anything goes wrong over here, you give a shout. All right. But Clay didn't think he would. He didn't know why he thought that. It made no sense to think a man wouldn't give a shout to save himself if he was in trouble. But Clay did think it. Alice said, Please change your mind, Mr. Riccardi. It's not safe in Boston. You must know that by now. Mr. Riccardi only looked away. And Clay thought, now what I wonder, this is how a man looks when he decided that the risk of death is better than the risk of change. Come on, Clay said. Let's make some sandwiches while we still got electricity to see by. Some bottled water wouldn't hurt either, Tom said. The electricity failed just as they were wrapping the last of their sandwiches in the Metropolitan Cafe, tidy, white, tiled little kitchen. By then, Clay had tried 3 more times to get Todd to Maine. True. Time. Wait, let me. Yeah, we see it. Wait. By then, Clay had tried 3 times to get through to Maine. Once to his old house, once to Kent Pond Elementary, where Shan taught, and once to Joshua Chamberlain Middle School, where Johnny now attended. In no case did he get further than Maine 207 area code. When the lights in the metropolitan went out, Alice streamed in what at first seemed to Clay like total darkness. Then the emergency lights came on. Alice was not much comfort. She was clinging to Tom with one arm. In the other, she was brandishing the bread knife she used to cut the sandwiches with. Her eyes were wide and somehow flat. "Alice, put that knife down," Clay said, a little more harshly than he intended, "before you cut one of us with it. Or yourself," Tom said in that mild, soothing voice of his. Spectacles glimpsed the glare of an emergency light. She put it down, then promptly picked it up again. I want it," she said. "I want to take it with me. You have one." "Clay, I want one." "Alright," he said, "but you don't have a belt. We'll make you one from the tablecloth. For now, just be careful." Half the sandwiches were roast beef and cheese, half ham and cheese. Alice had wrapped them in saran wrap. Under the cash register, Cloud found a stack of sacks with doggy bag written on one side and people bag written on the other. He and Tom tumbled the sandwiches into a pair of these. Into a third bag, they put 3 bottles of water. The table had been made up for a dinner service that was never going to happen. 2 or 3 had been tumbled over, but most stood perfect, with their glasses and silver shining in the hard light of the emergency boxes on the walls. Something about their calm underliness hurt Clay's heart. Cleanliness of the folded napkins and the little electric lamps on each table. Those were now dark, and he had an idea it might be a long time before the bulbs inside lit up again. He saw Alice and Tom gazing about with faces as unhappy as his felt, and a desire to cheer them up. Almost manic in its urgency came over him. He remembered a trick he used to do for his son. He wondered again about Johnny's cell phone, and the panicked rat took another nip out of it. Clay hoped with all his heart the damn phone was lying forgotten under Johnny's G's bed, among the dust kitties with its battery flat. "Watch this carefully," he said, setting his bag of sandwiches aside. "And please note that at no time do my hands leave my wrist." He grasps the hanging skirt of the tablecloth. "This is hardly the time for parlor tricks," Tom said. "I want to see," Alice said. For the first time since they met her, there was a smile on her face. It was small, but it was there. "We need a tablecloth," Clay said. "It won't take a second, and besides, the lady wants to see." He turned to Alice. "But you have to say the magic word. Shazam will do." "Shazam," she said, and Clay pulled briskly with both hands. He hadn't done that trick in 2, maybe even 3 years. It almost didn't work, and yet at the same time, his mistake. Some small hesitation in the pull, no doubt, accurately added to the charm of the thing. Instead of staying where they were, while the tablecloth magically disappeared from beneath them, all the place settings on the table moved about 4 inches to the right. The glass nearest to where Clay was standing actually wound up with circular base half on and half off the table. Alice applauded, now laughing. Clay took a bow with his hands held out. Can we go now? Oh great. Vermicelli? Tom asked, but even Tom was smiling. Clay could see his small teeth in the emergency lights. "Soon's our Regulus," Clay said. She can carry the knife on one side and the bag of sandwiches on the other. You can tote the water. He folded the tablecloth over into a triangular shape, then rolled it quietly into a belt. He slipped a bag of sandwiches onto this by the bag's carrier handles, then put the tablecloth around the girl's slim waist, having to take a turn and a half and tie the knot in back to make the thing secure. Jeez, all these details, man. He finished by sliding the threaded bread knife home on the right side. Say, you're pretty handy, Tom said. Handy as dandy, Clay said, and then something else blew up outside, close enough to shake the cafe. Glass that had been standing half on and half off the table lost its balance, tumbled to the floor and shattered. The three of them looked at it. Clay thought to tell them he didn't believe in omens, but that would only make things worse. Besides, he did. Clay had his reasons for wanting to go back to the Atlantic Avenue Inn before they set off. One was to retrieve his portfolio, which he'd left sitting in the lobby. Another was to see if they couldn't find some sort of makeshift scabbard for Alice's knife. He reckoned even a shaving kit would do, if it was long enough. A third was to give Mr. Riccardi another chance to join him. He was surprised to find he wanted this even more than he wanted the forgotten portfolio of drawings. He had taken an odd, reluctant liking to the man. When he confessed this to Tom, Tom surprised him by nodding. "It's the way I feel about anchovies on pizzas," he said. "I tell myself there is something disgusting about a combination of cheese, tomato sauce, and that fish. Sometimes that shameful urge comes over me, and I can't stand against it." A blizzard of black ash and soot was blowing up the street, and between the buildings, car alarms warbled, burglar alarms braided, fire alarms clanked. There seemed to be no heat in the air, but Clay could hear the crackle of fire to the south and east of them. The smell of burning was stronger too. They heard voices shouting, but they were back towards the common, where Bolston Street widened. When he got next door to the Atlantic Avenue Inn, Tom helped Clay push one of the Queen Anna chairs away from one of the broken glass door panels. The lobby beyond now was a pool of gloom in which Mr. Riccardi's desk and the sofa were only darkened shadows. If Clay hadn't already been in there, he would have had no idea what those shadows represented. Above the elevators, a single emergency light guttered, the box's battery beneath it buzzing like a horsefly. "Mr. Riccardi," Tom called. "Mr. Riccardi, we came back to see if you changed your mind." There was no reply. After a moment, Alice began carefully to knock out the glass teeth that still jutted from the window frame. "Mr. Riccardi," Tom called again. And when there was still no answer, he turned to Clay. "You're going in there, are you?" "Yes, to get my portfolio. It's got my drawings in it. I don't have copies." "Those are the originals," Clay said, as if this explained everything. To him it did, and besides, there was Mr. Riccardi. He said, "I'll be listening." "What if Thumper from upstairs got him?" Tom asked. "If that had happened, I think we have heard him thumping around down here," Clay said. "For that matter, he would have come running at the sound of our voices, babbling like a guy who tried to carve us up back by the common." And with this, I'm going to end it here for this book reading. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.